My next guest is in Istanbul, like Haroon was. So we go back there. But actually, like many of the people tonight, he's also someone who was raised in the Bay Area in Northern California. He trained as a photojournalist, Mustafa Davis. I'm talking about the documentary filmmaker. He works between both photojournalism and documentary filmmaking. He says he was kicked out of his piano lessons at the age of 9 because he kept changing the songs to the way he wanted to hear them played. And that's really, I guess, why a lot of us enter filmmaking in the first place. We get to create our own worlds and shape our own content. And so he first picked up his camera at the age of 11 and learned how to develop films in a makeshift home closet darkroom. He later studied to become a photojournalist and eventually ended up in film school at the New York Film Academy. He's directed and produced several feature-length documentary films, many short films and commercials, and his films have won awards and been showcased on PBS, POV, The Atlantic, WNET, Discovery, BBC, Amazon Prime, and so many others. Mustafa, assalamu alaikum. Thank you for being here with us today.
Wa alaikum salam. It's my pleasure. Alhamdulillah. Forgive me, I'm actually in transit. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
I'm in transit right now, so I have an unstable internet connection.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually not. I'm actually in California, and so if it.
Excellent, good. I think the line's not that clear, but the connection's not that great, but we'll carry on.
Okay.
I mean, looking at the work that you've been doing over the years, and in terms of quality documentary filmmaking, how conscious are you yourself of how you're trying to represent the people around you in the community? Do you feel there's a responsibility that you have in doing that?
The community, we mean the greater Muslim community?
Yeah, or even just your local community, as it were, just the people around you, really.
I think that weight will never disappear. It's always going to be there, kind of hanging over your shoulder, if you're approaching filmmaking from an ethical purview. But I think most importantly is that you're doing justice to the people that whose stories you're telling. I think that's where the most pressure comes for me in terms of being authentic. And so, you know, obviously the people that are on this panel here are definitely my predecessors and far more advanced than I am in filmmaking. But in documentary genre, when you get to the editing room, you can make the film go any direction that you want it to go, and you can make your subject look any way that you want them to go. If you consider you're doing like a 70-to-1 ratio. So if you're making a film that's an hour long, you might perhaps have 70 hours of footage. And that's 70 hours of changes of character through this person and kind of catching them when they're not really on guard that the camera's there if you're doing your job well as a filmmaker. So I think for me, the most pressure comes into representing the subject of the film, because I do primarily documentary. I haven't worked with actors since film school. And so for me, that pressure is there. And then secondarily, of course, you know, as a Muslim filmmaker, I don't particularly make films that are proselytizing, or I don't make films that you would say are Islamic films. I kind of lean more into the fact that I'm a practicing Muslim and I'm a filmmaker. And so I make films that are going to have themes of Islam and are going to be Islamically based, but that might necessarily be the goal of the film that I'm making. So the pressure is there, I think, from both sides, but first and foremost for the subjects that I'm filming.
And how do you choose your subject matter? What is it that, you know, what factors are there when you think I'm going to take this project on?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. It's kind of whatever sticks out for me. I did a film called The Warm Heart of Africa that's on orphans in Malawi. And the way that film came about is that my father is not a Muslim, he's an atheist. And we were having a challenging conversation one day, and he said that, you know, he was asking me some questions, and he said, you know, Muslims believe that this is the last religion to come to mankind. And I said, yes, this is the belief. And he said, and so there's no prophets or anything coming after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And I said, no prophets. And then his response to me for that, he said, I will believe that when I see the Muslims caring about issues outside of their own circle of concern. And so I didn't have a response to him, to be honest. If we're going to have a really candid conversation, there was some truth to what he was saying. Obviously, there's exceptions. And so I went online and I Googled poorest country in the world. Malawi came up. I started doing research, and I met a wonderful woman by the name of Mary Woodworth, who takes care of both Christian and Muslim orphans. And that's how that film started. It was the reason I chose this film was a response to my father's statement about Muslims really kind of being hyper concerned with their own issues and not issues outside of their own community.
Mm. I mean, you have an awareness, obviously, of when you have family members who are not Muslims, you're very aware of the perception of Muslims from the, as it were, from the wider community. At Alchemiya, we've been very concerned about creating that interspace between, I guess, what are internal Muslim conversations and Muslim content, as it were, just for ourselves, but also something that is accessible to anybody, that has a universalist approach. Is that something that you think is possible?
I definitely think it's possible, and I think it's probably going to be the fastest track to that is the diversity and the level of filmmakers that we have that are producing. Because I think we produce our best work when we're producing films that are important to us. And so if you look at like my body of work, these are all stories that matter to me. They're not stories that I'm telling for the intention of, I want to make this film so that people see Islam this way, or I want to make this film so that this film has this effect in the world. These are issues that are important to me. So I'm telling stories that matter. And in a lot of ways, you know, as a filmmaker, you're you know, for lack of a more adab way to say it, you're kind of telling your story through these characters on screen. And so in many ways you're relating to them. And so for me, you know, the title I think of my session here is the Black Muslim narrative. And so, you know, as a Black American Muslim, of course, that's going to be part of my narrative. That's going to be at the forefront, especially when you consider this group being one of the most disenfranchised groups of Muslims in the West. Of course, my work is going to have that in it. So I did Prison Blues. I did Message to Zaire, which is a film about a young mixed race, a Black and Mexican child who wants to become a police officer at the height of this kind of police brutality. And then I did a film called Redneck Muslim, which people might think, you know, this film is about a white convert, but even still, this is still pushing back towards the Black narrative of racism. I wanted to tell this story because there's this, you know, white convert to Islam who grew up in Jackson, Mississippi with a very racist family. He said his grandfather taught him how to tie a noose. And so he's combating that by going out and asking Black Americans, more specifically Black American Muslims, what can he do to help? And so even that film, in a sense, had something to do with that. And so a very long-winded way to answer your question, Sidi, but I think we can do it. But it's a matter of diversity. You know, I'm not gonna write a film like or a series like Little Mosque on the Prairie, because it's not my social experience, right? Although I appreciate it and see that the necessity of this, you know, for our narrative moving forward, you know. And then, you know, I remember criticisms when this came out that, oh, this doesn't speak to the entire community. This isn't my narrative. And that perhaps that's true, but it doesn't mean that it's not an important integral part of our narrative. I think we just need more diversity in our filmmakers so that people can tell their own story, and then at the you know, the aggregate of all those films will tell our story collectively.
I mean, that's been our experience at Alchemiya in terms of us going out. We have and trying to just even aggregate and curate content. We find ourselves, you know, who is the audience? How broad do we go? How nuanced are we? Who are we representing? And what is the difference between, I guess, something which is very Islamic, or just is this? I mean, we always say we're not Islamic. We're just a platform. A platform can't be Islamic. It just happens to feature and celebrate the culture of Muslims and globally, as it were. But increasingly, when we put together a collection called Black, Muslim and Proud. This was even way before you know, George Lloyd, and people were like, oh, this is fantastic because now you're showing Black Muslims about their culture. And it's like, actually, no, it's actually for us Pakistanis to watch, because we need to educate ourselves on their journeys. I think they know their own history, right? But one of the things is that it's the two emissions are Muslim women filmmakers and of course minority filmmakers, including Black Muslim filmmakers. I mean, there's been so much prominence now because of BLM in terms of, you can go onto Netflix and Amazon, they've put special collections together. Apple TV have done the same, because people are saying, well, look, you need to learn. We need to learn about each other. And that really is one of the big power that documentary has. It's a force for social change, for social awareness, for social good. And it has a great moral purpose behind it. Unfortunately, the addiction with, one of the problems that we now have because of Netflix is it's just this vast behemoth that's going to eat all content and eat all filmmakers, and therefore it will decide what can and can't be shown. But the bigger danger is just the addiction to drama. And drama was something which, to me, it is like eating fine steak. But if you eat that every day, you'll clog your arteries up, and you need some bitterness, you need some dessert, you need all sorts of different things. And actually, that's where I think, when we look at the figures of who's been watching our content, of course, it's the movies and the drama that gets the most views, and people are missing out. So part of why we're doing some of these sessions is to start to educate people on the value of these documentaries. And of course, when we when we get people writing into us about the documentaries, it's amazing, because the majority of people are non-Muslims who are writing in and saying, I watched this film, I watched Redneck Muslim, man, I learned so much. We had a film called Salam Dunk, and it was about a group of girls playing basketball in Iraq. And, someone wrote in and said that they cried when they watched it, and it turned the dial on their understanding of Islam. And that power is incredible today, and having that there. And so actually, in that context, I think we are very, very keen ourselves. When we spoke recently, you talked about the importance of reading, and you said that that has a huge impact on filmmaking. Can you expand a bit more about that?
When we were reading in terms of education, in terms of film, or just keeping up?
Just even book reading. You were saying about the art of book reading, what was happening in terms of younger filmmakers.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we do some training programs and some workshops, and you'll find how few of up and coming artists have read, not even the classics, and not anything related to filmmaking. I became a filmmaker because my father, because he's an avid reader, he had a pretty traumatic life growing up, and he said science fiction is what kept him alive. And so, he's a storyteller. He writes short stories. And when I was younger, he bought a video store, and that's kind of how I became a filmmaker. And at that time, to become a young filmmaker, I was devouring maybe 3 or 4 films at some point per day, because we had access to all these films now. So now I'm watching, things like I'm watching Stanley Kubrick films, things that I hadn't seen, before. I'm watching Seventh Samurai and these things. And at one point he comes to me and said, this is good if you want to be a filmmaker, this is good. But what's going to be more important to you is if you read 4 books a day than watching 4 films a day. And so he's an avid reader. And so I think the quality of our films is going to be based on the quality of our education as filmmakers going into them. And so my advice to young filmmakers is get your hands on as many books as you can, especially for documentarians, to read biographies. Read as many biographies as you can to learn about the lives of these people, because in a biography, you're basically watching a screenplay for a documentary. It's someone's entire life put into this short format now for you to look at. And so you can kind of see how to structure documentaries from it. So I think reading is vital. CD, I wanted to say one thing also, in terms of Alchemiya, and we're talking about the diversity of the type of films that we can get. There's a lot of talent out there, and people that, if we were to be able to just get access to them and see their work, we would be blown away, all of us. And so I think the something like Alchemiya, we don't have a problem in terms of creativity. This was the conversation we were having in the late 90s, early 2000s. We don't have the problem of, is art permissible anymore? We've gone past that. But now we're getting to the point where we have to start getting to the point where we're telling these stories and then having distribution for them. So the issue is distribution. I've made feature-length films that never saw distribution because the platforms aren't out there. And this isn't at all, I'm very happy for the work that we do with PVS and POV, and I love doing work with them and taking stuff mainstream. But even then, you're still not entirely independent as a Muslim filmmaker, because you have to adhere to what it is that they know their audiences want. And so you're still making some compromises in your story that you might not make if you own the platform yourself. So I just wanted to say this, that I think the importance of something like Alchemiya and it becoming a premium distribution platform for filmmakers, not just our travel logs that we do as YouTubers, but really premium film, which is why you have people like Ovida and why you have people like Haroon here, like people who understand classic filmmaking to get our films at that level and putting them out. At that point, I think we're going to be able to see the creativity that we have out there in the community, inshallah.
Inshallah. Amazing. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you giving us your time.
Barakallahu fikum, Sidi. Barakallahu fikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.
Thank you so much to all of the panelists, all of the people who've taken part today. All of this is just to highlight actually the talent, the creativity, the ideas that are there, but what stopped it? Why was it not here? Why have we not seen this? Why can't we not switch on our television and our platforms and watch this every night? And the main reason has been, of course, money. It's been this idea of creating an economy around content producers and creating a whole system that can actually support young talent, young people to come through and to actually turn it into a system whereby we have the content and we connect it with the people who are the viewers. And it's important. It's an expensive business. It's not something that which actually it can be done cheaply. And in order to have quality, it's there. Now, we've actually made quite a lot of progress with Alchemiya in terms of the platform is now up. We're getting an amazing response in terms of new subscriptions. People are coming through, and clearly there is a demand. People are very interested in and want to watch it, but we have a long way to go in terms of actually just improving that. And I just made some notes earlier. We talked about Ertuğrul, that as a kind of a model of this is what's possible. What the most important thing that Ertuğrul has done more than anything is to actually give an indication of the size of the audience. 72 countries where it's been shown, that's 1.5 billion views on YouTube. And so actually it shows you what's possible, that actually if we get this right and we bring together the talent and the ideas, and we need financing, that's really, really important. And on that note, we're launching today our campaign on LaunchGood to raise money for the next stage, which is to start producing original content. With me, I've got Chris from LaunchGood, Chris Abdulrahman, and we're going to talk a bit more about how the campaign is going to run, and he's going to tell us about the platform. Assalamu alaikum, Chris.
Hey, assalamu alaikum, Naveed. How's it going?
Yeah, very well, very well. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here all that time and waiting patiently to the end, as it were.
You know, I interrupted earlier. I don't know if you heard when I was reciting a little Quran, but there are more embarrassing things you can interrupt the Zoom call with.
All the barakah for the discussion, no problem.
Just trying to show off, you know. Joking.
Excellent. Without a doubt, what you've achieved with LaunchGood over these past 5, 6, 7 years, it's been an incredible journey, and it's now almost cemented without doubt into our community, into the perception of the community, and people really, really have this idea of the function that it plays, the importance of it. We look up to you at Alchemiya because actually we have a very similar mission in that we want to be that space for young Muslims and for Muslim creatives in terms of supporting them, in terms of actually being there for them to realize these projects, to let them come through. And of course, a lot of the projects on LaunchGood have been to raise finance and support money for creative projects, as it were. So what do you think our chances are to get this to happen?
It depends on the audience and it depends on the volunteers. It's a really, actually, extremely realistic goal. You know, it's definitely within our power. I think a really good example, and the one I want to highlight, there's so many to highlight. The one I want to highlight, though, is a recent one we did with, you had City Haroon Sujic on earlier in the call. So one we did with City Haroon along with City Peter Sanders earlier this year, where they're making a mini book series called The Exemplars. So these are, you know, exemplar Muslims, saintly people who have passed away in the last 100 years. And they had a goal of $30,000. And they actually didn't think they could raise $30,000. They just thought it's too much. COVID just happened. People are losing their jobs, but they really needed it, just like you guys really need that 50,000. Like, we can't make this stuff happen for free. It's just not physically possible. Alhamdulillah, they ended up raising $88,000. They ended up raising their goal of $30,000 in 14 hours only.
Wow.
But it's because they had a really active volunteer group, and they used a trick. And so I'm not sure how many people are watching this webinar right now.
I have no idea. I think it's on Zoom and it's going through to Facebook Live, etc. So yeah. So maybe if the car can send me a message and I can have a look, see if he.
All right, cool. Well, it's actually really simple, and we've been encouraging this to a lot of our campaigns on LaunchGood, and everyone that's really used it has had brilliant success on their campaigns. And it's really something that a lot of times we think about these big influencers, or we need like, Mo Saleh to like tweet us or something to get funded. And that's not actually the case. It's about, crowdfunding, and especially projects like Alchemiya, they're about ground support, building up the ground support. It starts from the bottom up, not the top down. And it's amazing, actually. Like, so these campaigns, just like the Exemplars one, that's exactly what happened. It's bottom up. We just empowered volunteers. It's actually really easy to get your own unique link to donate, and then you share that with your friends and family. And if everyone could get, for example, like if we got 50 people to say, okay, I'll get 5 people to share and to donate, and they use that link, that's 250 donations. That's probably going to get you pretty close to $50,000.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, can we share screens? Can we kind of walk through that process during this call here? Is that something you want to do, or?
I'm not sure, actually. I think we've made a small video, which will be going up on our Facebook page, on our social media, and we can also put it through probably some other channels so people are aware of how to do that.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, just, for anyone watching, I just really want to stress that we have to not just donate, like in myself, I think you're the same in the Naveed. We're not millionaires, right? Like, we can't max out our credit card, and this is not, practical. But I'll just give a small example. This is a little bit embarrassing personally. But I always try to donate $5 here and there on LaunchGood, and then I share it. And I share it on Facebook and Twitter sometimes. And to be honest, I don't even use Facebook, but I know that I have friends and stuff that like pay attention to what I post on Facebook. And I started noticing, like, every time I share, like, okay, usually 1, 2, 3, 4 people might donate from that. And then we were doing some research, and we found that the amount of money I've donated on LaunchGood, 20 times that amount of money has been donated because I shared. Wow. 20 times. Can you imagine? So, like, yeah, maybe all someone can do for your campaign is $50. But if they can do $50 and then share it with people, they might be able to raise $1,000. And it feels great, because there's there's a cool hadith, adal al khair kafa'ilihi. The one who guides somebody to good action, it's as if they did themselves. That's what it means. Like, if you're the one trying to sell Alchemy all the time, people are going to zone you out, right? But if they keep hearing about it, and they're hearing it from their friends, the friends they trust, voices they trust, like Zarqa, man, they're going to start giving. And inshallah, this is going to become a success, and it's something that we'll be able to look proudly back on. And I'm not sure people know, but you and I first met 6 years ago, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
In New York, the American Muslim Consumer Conference.
I got beat by you to second place.
Well, yeah, it wasn't fair, because we were already live and we had a head start on you.
Yeah. Yes, we should let people know what happened. We were in a Shark Tank competition in New Jersey with the American Muslim Consumer Consortium, AMCC.
That's right.
Yeah. And
we won the Shark Tank.
Yeah. But we'll invite you back to England and give you a run.
I only play games I know I can win.
Yeah. So, I won't forget what happened was I did the pitch, and actually it was my first time ever doing a pitch in public. I hadn't really done that before. And one of the judges, they just drilled in on what we were planning to do, what our figures were. And everybody just said, this is far bigger than you're saying it is. This is huge. You know, this is like, you know, have you seen the size of Netflix? I mean, you know, you could go global. There's 1.8 billion Muslims.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I was like, no, we're just being modest. You know, we are British. I mean, for goodness sake, we're trying to do this in a very reasonable, slow, small way. And they were like, and then the next guy said to me, you know, go big or go home. You know, so there was all of the classic American kind of euphemisms that were pushed out. And the best one was, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face. And
yeah, Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson.
That's a great American right there.
Yeah. And here we are. It's 5 years of since Alchemiya was launched, and man, we've been punched in the face so many times, but we've got up and we're here. And actually now it's stronger and better. We've learned, we've made mistakes by the dozen, and we're in such a really brilliant place, you know. So it's really exciting, and that's why we feel now the time is right to actually start to build a network, get people in. It's like an arc, really. We built this kind of space for.
Did you guys talk about the twerking video on movie on Netflix yet, or has that not come up in the webinar?
No, I mean, I touched on it. I mean, yesterday we had the most subscriptions we've ever had, and
there you go.
And we were, you know, we had the pleasure of trolling Netflix by saying to people, okay, if you don't like that, come to us. And literally people were saying, I'm canceling Netflix and I'm going to Alchemiya. So we saw a spike in the age of COVID. They're not normally good, but they're great for us. So we had a spike of traffic coming in.
You know, we're in such a unique time as a global Muslim community. The example I like to give is the halal burgers one. Have you heard that? Have you heard me talk about halal burgers?
No, please tell us.
You haven't heard this? Okay, good. I don't want to bore you. So I became Muslim in 2001, and some may know it's Amherst, Massachusetts. It's Western Massachusetts. We probably have more cows than people that live there year round. The closest masjid was almost an hour away. So, at that time, alhamdulillah, now we actually have a masjid, but it's a very, you know, limited Muslim community, mostly immigrants that have come to, because they're students at the local university, which is University of Massachusetts. And, you know, I've become Muslim, I'm 16. You know, I'm trying to eat halal, and there's like, you know, just very, very limited options for halal. So if you get halal, it's going to be like biryani, or, you know, maybe some sort of Arab dish. And one time we're at a picnic and someone's like, hey, you want some halal burgers? I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, you know, I've been dying. I haven't had a burger in like a year or two. And I get this like kafta meat between two slices of bread. And I'm like, no, that's not a burger, you know? Fast forward, I live at least in Dearborn, Michigan, and I think we have some Canadians here. Toronto is definitely this way. Halal burgers are the best burgers. So if you go to Michigan, even non-Muslims know that like halal burgers are really great quality. I'm even visiting my brother-in-law here in Massachusetts at the moment, and he made his like famous burgers, and he uses this halal grass-fed beef from Australia, you know? So it's changed, right? And then we have these great burgers, and halal is part of the brand, and it's not like an antithesis to the brand. So that's amazing. Like, what happened in these 20 years where halal burgers went from this thing that, you know, was putrid to like something that's, you know, so desirable. And I think it's similar to Ertuğrul. It's the quality, right? That if, you know, so in Dearborn we have, and if you're not familiar with Dearborn, it's one of the highest concentrations of Muslims and Arabs in all of America. So we have all these old school, you know, Levantine style restaurants. So you're talking about Syrian, Lebanese style food, very delicious. But like, how many of those can you have? There's like dozens of them. So their kids actually starting restaurants that are like doing burgers, barbecue, Thai food, sushi. And so we have like, you know, on the east side of Dearborn, all this old school stuff. On the west side of Dearborn, all the new school stuff, but it's halal. And those kids are like, they're American, but they're proudly Muslim. So they want to, you know, combine this kind of modern palate with their values. And that's what we're seeing, for example, with Ertuğrul. Like, I used to be, and maybe some people don't know this, but you know this, I think. I used to be in film. I was a film producer. We had a film go to Sundance in 2010 called Blauvelt Stand. And at that time, we were trying to raise money for films, like these Muslim value films. And one of the challenges we got was like, when was the last time Muslims made any money off a film, right? And it's like, well, there's the message by Mustafa Davis in what, 1974 or something like that. So you're talking about nearly 40 years have passed and no one's made something, you know, of value. And a lot of the investors we talked to actually believe there was no market. That was their reasoning. There's no market. But now we saw with Ertuğrul, there's definitely a market. First, there was the Omar series, and then it even grew bigger with the Ertuğrul Resurrection. And what's the difference between Ertuğrul Resurrection and the stuff that came out in the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s? It's the quality. And that quality comes at a price. I don't know what the production cost of Ertuğrul is, but it's not insignificant. It's really high quality,
yeah.
But there's no other way to do it. That's how we have to do it. And so I really hope, like, you know, I want you to hold me accountable. I'm going to support this campaign for sure. But I really hope everyone listening stops and takes a moment to do this. Few are they? Like 98% of people listening right now will not donate. Unfortunately, that's human nature. But what I'm calling to is the 2%. Like I want that 2% really to go to launchgood.com/Alchemiya, I think, right? Yes. launchgood.com/Alchemiya. Make a donation, and then on the thank you page, you'll see it's so obvious how to share this campaign. And every time a friend donates, whether you share it on WhatsApp or Twitter or Facebook, every time a friend donates, you're going to be told like, hey, your friend Amina Chowdhury just donated to Alchemiya because of you. Don't worry, Amina, we won't show how much you donated. But you know, we have to do it. Like that's the only way is we have to work together. We have to put our money where our mouth is and show people like talk is cheap, man. We got to get it done.
Since he mentioned my name, I just want to say that my films have become a reality because I was able to use LaunchGood. And the films have succeeded because I had donors, you know, that I can still name that actually sort of helped make it happen. So
thanks for that, Amina. Yeah, it's real. Like, and it's not, we're not talking about, like, I remember when I was doing my film budget, I had to raise, for our second film, I had to raise $1 million. And that film never got made because I never raised $1 million. It's hard. Yeah. Right? And we're just talking about $50,000 can unlock a lot of potential here. And so, you know, thank you for really the hard work you're doing.
This past 8 months, experienced something that can only be described as a burst of barakah. So we've been going for 5 years. The first 4 years, we made so many mistakes, wasted money, saw little results, just went down dead ends that didn't turn up anywhere, tread water, nothing happened. And then just literally in 8 months with, you would not believe it, just a minuscule amount of money, we've seen just this incredible flowering and flourishing, and suddenly all this activity and everything's happened. And so actually that's the classical definition of barakah. Just this tiny drop just has just gone bang.
That's it.
Produce this amazing thing. And that, so we're kind of on a roll. We're really excited about that. That we at last, it's sort of our time has come. We've been patiently in the queue waiting, and so yeah. So thank you so much. We really thank you for your wonderful platform and for all of your support. And please, you know, you're one of our biggest fans, and we know that.
Yeah, so. And you're very proper British, you know, Muslim. I'm a brash American. I'm just going to say it again. People really need to donate. I'm as a
it's so embarrassing.
CEO,
we have to talk about money.
CEO, I actually have full access to see who donated. So I'm going to first hold these panelists, you know, from Amina to Zarq to Video to Mustafa. I'm going to hold them accountable, make sure they actually donated, inshallah. But we all have to do it, really, even if it's just $1. Like we can all afford $1, and then we share, and then the barakah comes. And you don't know, like, really, it could be maybe you donate $1 and you shared, and it generates $1,000 because of that. So we all, you know, it's easy for us to do the work. You're really doing the hard work. I know, because we built LaunchGood and you're building this. It's super duper hard. Hamza, you're doing the hard work. All we have to do is take a little bit of our money and put it into what you guys are doing and really help set you off, inshallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, inshallah. Thank you for your time. Excellent.